The secret to happiness. Really. Now, that sounds like clickbait or overpromise title just to get you to watch it, but I sat and I thought what could be more accurate, what would be better, more appropriate, and there isn't anything. It really is the real deal. So, here we go. Figuring out life and how to be happy can often seem so confusing and so elusive. Life is busy. There's way too much information coming at us from way too many sources. How do we find happiness in the madness? There's one most fundamental key principle that I am pretty excited to share with you. And it is something you can do something about. Let's take a look at this from a whole person perspective, and especially including some of the latest science and the spiritual dimension as whole people. It can be so hard to get to what really matters. There are no end of things to distract us, people and companies and products that promise us the world, that almost guarantee us happiness from buying their thing or their soap or whatever it is. What really delivers? I love trying to understand this wonderful thing called life and existence and how things really work. There are actually only a small number of fundamental underlying principles to a sustainable, fulfilling, happy life. But they are so obscured so much of the time. When you get past all the different labels and the paradigms to a clear principle, and you get down to where it can not be further reduced or refined, when you come to that same fundamental principle from multiple modes or directions of discovery, modern science, spiritual, experiential, when you find that it works over and over in day-to-day life when you apply it, and it stands the test of time, you have found reality, at least to the greatest extent and the greatest confidence that we can have as human beings. And you've likely found one of the real keys to life and happiness. So, these factors all convene for me down to the last point on this principle. And it's kind of like, in my mind, it seems almost like all the gears and machinery of a giant safe, a vault. Click, 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 click. Everything pulls in, you turn the wheel, and the door opens. And you now have access to the treasure inside. At least that's the visual that comes to my mind. These are things that really make me excited and happy, as does sharing the discovery with you and with other people. So, let's start with modern science. There is a boatload of modern science that we could look at, but if you distill it all down most closely to what it really is, one researcher I think came the closest that I have yet seen. So this researcher is a gentleman, a physician by the name of George Vaillant, I hope I'm saying that right, who's a psychiatrist and professor at Harvard Medical School. He's also the director of the psychiatry's research department. He wrote a book called Triumphs of Experience, The Men of the Harvard Grant Study. Huge study over many, many years, getting into all the details of life and how life really works. So I will quote him, then clarify and distill the concept. He says there are two pillars of happiness, and I quote, "One is love, the other is finding a way of coping with life that does not push love away." And then later on he's quoted as saying, "The 75 years and $20 million expended on the grant study points to a straightforward 5-word conclusion. Happiness is love. Full stop." Okay? Now, let's clarify this. Is happiness love? Well, yes and no. Not really. We'll save the discussion on the definition of happiness for another time. In the whole person neuron model, the electricity flowing through the neuron in and out is love. Love powers all the machinery that produces happiness and the full spectrum of healthy, sustainable pleasures. Like electricity, it makes many good things happen, such as it can make a light bulb produce light like happiness. Electricity flows, light comes on, you get the light, you get the happiness. Now that's great that love is this central power and we recognize that. But what can we do that affects or changes our experience of this ultimate power that produces happiness? Did you catch it in the quote? Finding a way of coping with life that does not push love away. Okay, that's the part we can do something about. What does this mean in practice? Allowing yourself to be loved. Notice it doesn't say that you have to go find love. You don't have to win love. You just have to not push it away. If you don't push it away, you will have it. What would you call the opposite of pushing something away? Receiving it? Accepting it? Okay, do you have that? The action item that this all hinges on from the scientific summary is receive love or don't push love away. It has already come to you. That's the assumption. That's the underlying premise. Now let's look at this from the spiritual perspective, from the vertical, if you will, in our neuron model. Now for context, I'm especially fascinated with the transformation of people at the deepest levels from the spiritual context. Not just simply finding a religion that creates structure or norms for behavior. But I'm talking about radical transformation where selfish, hurtful people find ultimate peace and go from being takers to givers. And they then live a life that is seeking to benefit other people. How does this happen? In essence, what is the science of salvation, if you will? Now, Jesus taught, I have come so that they may have life in its fullest measure, at least according to the complete Jewish version of the Bible. The grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all people. Okay, to all people. Now, is everyone transformed? Does everyone experience this? Well, obviously no. It's not happening. So what is the individual's part for this salvation, this transformation to take place? What's the bottom line essence or principle? And I'm not talking about parroted verbiage of religion. I'm talking about reality here. But to as many as did receive him, to those who put their trust in his person and power, he gave the right to become children of God. Who is he? Well, another place it says, those who do not love do not know God, because God is love. A little further in the same passage it says, we have come to know and trust the love that God has for us. God is love, and those who remain in this love remain united with God, and God remains united with them. The science of salvation is that the fundamental action of humanity leading to transformation, to this life in its fullest measure, indefinitely sustainable, greatest happiness, so forth. Did you catch it? Choose to receive the one who is love. Choose to receive love. To allow ourselves to be loved. It's the same fundamental principle as found in the huge Harvard grant study that covered over 75 years. Okay? Now let's look to our own experience, day-to-day life, all around us. Does this actually work? Test it out. Look, pay attention. When we or other people put up walls, we build shells, we close ourselves off, we don't let other people really get to us. How happy are we or other people when they do that? How much love can flow? How bright and vibrant is their life? It stinks. It's really dim. It's not much fun. There's not much happiness there. Okay, so we can obviously see this. We know this. We talk all the time about, closing off, if you will, in terms of a relationship. How many of you have heard of mirror neurons? Okay, they're these really cool neurons in our brains that cause us to mirror what we see. We see something and we mirror it back, if you will. So imagine a baby. If you are holding a baby in your arms and do the adult thing that we ridiculously do, and we make all these exaggerated faces and talk goo goo gaga kinds of stuff, what does the baby do when you smile at him or her? They smile back. That is the mirror neurons. The baby's not having to put effort into it, it just happens. We're wired to respond to love. Okay, even from birth. Now, think about what happens when you meet someone and they stick out their hand. What do? Well, you put your hand out, you shake their hand. Not so much in the pandemic anymore at this point in time, at least not for a little while. How much effort does it take to put your hand out versus how much effort does it take to make sure you don't put your hand out? I don't know about you, where I've gotten used to responding to people automatically. I have to put forth a lot of effort to not receive their friendliness, their friendly expression. Hopefully we do a different sort of friendly exchange in this current context, but not the handshake, at least not for now. Those are all examples of this automatic responsiveness to goodness coming towards us. Now, pretty much all of us have been hurt. We have reasons to want to protect ourselves from more hurt. It doesn't feel good. But when we close off and we put up the walls, neither can real love flow, and we can't have the happiness that comes from that. Now, the primary necessary ingredient in this is vulnerability. If you haven't seen it yet, I would really encourage you to watch the TED Talk by Brene Brown on vulnerability. She's a researcher and author. She has a wildly popular TED Talk on this issue where she walks through how vulnerability is critical to the connecting that we are designed for and exist for. You will find that this principle of choosing to receive love is both immediately obvious and stands the test of time. So let's pull this all together. What is the secret to happiness? It's not just knowing that it involves love, a piece of head knowledge, but it's what we have control over, what we do that can alter the course of our lives by altering who we are at our core, by altering what allows us to connect, and therefore the juice that produces happiness to flow. It means we don't wall ourselves off. We choose to be vulnerable. Not crazy vulnerable, appropriately vulnerable. We don't push love away. Now let's clarify. Love in particular. There's a lot of versions of love out there. We're talking about genuine, unselfish compassion, grace, caring, valuing the deeper person. It is not sex or lust. It is not manipulation. It's not valuing other people based on superficial behaviors or appearances. Now, the unspoken important reality is that we realize that this love, this compassion, is actually all around us constantly. It's constantly coming to us, at us, if you will. And that is actually a critical piece of the application of this key principle. So how do we recognize the real deal? Let's look at an ultimate description from the spiritual perspective that speaks to both the vertical and the horizontal aspects in practice when this is really, the juice is flowing, if you will, okay? Eternal life is this: to know you, the one true God, and him whom you sent, Yeshua the Messiah, complete Jewish version of the Bible. Notice this definition of eternal life, or this life without limits, as otherwise put, is not a matter of time, okay? It's not a matter of time. It is a matter of connection. Specifically, being connected with the one true God, who is what? Who is love, real love, and love happening in the vertical and in the horizontal. Yeshua the Messiah demonstrating what this looks like in the horizontal, when love comes down and it's in this plane versus just the vertical plane. I pray that they may be united with us so that the world may believe that you sent me. The intention is that we be connected, such that, in effect, we are one, like billions of neurons are one brain. Yeshua is the example in the horizontal, and the indication of the real deal spiritually, in contrast with typical religion, is that it really works to produce life in its fullest measure. It lights people up. They genuinely connect. Life really flows. People live to give love instead of living to take. They have been transformed by, you should know it by now, receiving love. The secret? Don't push love away. Receive it. Allow it to transform you from the core out. Warning, you may be so happy you can hardly stand it at times. I'm Dr. Marc Braman, empowering you to live healthy, happy, whole,